Alright, I've got a Lizard Landscapes materials list video where I'm going to go through the products I have used and the products I'm currently using. So I'll try to tell you where I'm getting them and go through all this information. I'm going to use the tall waterfall footage as sort of an example. I'll also use some of the rainforest waterfall footage. First up is a dust mask. So you really want to wear one of these to protect you from the polystyrene dust and the mortar dust. You can get a much more professional looking dust mask like this. This is really a gas mask. Next is polystyrene. I've got these little 3/4 of an inch thick polystyrene sheets, basically insulation for a house. Get this at a hardware store. You can get these in packets of 5, I believe, and I think you can also get them online. But I've used this thickness for years and just recently bought or tried a very large piece of this thicker styrofoam, and what you can do is get one of the people in the store to cut it down for you. You can see the difference in the thickness between the other sheets and this larger sheet, just so you can fit it in the car, get them to cut it down. An optional product I've been using for a little while is a couple of hot wires from the hot wire foam factory. So I've got a couple here, a flexible one, and then just a straight wire, but this allows you to really sculpt the polystyrene efficiently. And one of the main benefits is there's essentially no mess because you don't get all those particles and bits and pieces from cutting into the foam as you would with this knife. So you are going to need something to be able to cut through the foam, but you can get a knife at the dollar store, no problem. The other thing is glue or adhesive. What I'm using here is Loctite's Power Grab. This is a low odor adhesive, and if you're going to get this type with that type of tube, you'll need a caulking gun. But you can also get this type of product in sort of a toothpaste type of tube, so not really necessary, but if you're going to get it like that, a caulking gun is definitely required to be able to get the adhesive out. Another thing I find myself using are black magic markers, just to be able to draw out a design, and occasionally I'll use it to be able to figure out where a cluster of rocks fits back together before you glue it. And of course, being able to know exactly where you should apply the glue for a certain system of pieces that you've got. The other thing I've used are these small little nails, but obviously you could use toothpicks, and being able to fit together pieces without having to commit to gluing them together, so you can take them apart and see, how is this going to look differently if I had these pieces in a different arrangement. Heavy duty gloves, an optional product, but I would highly recommend it. You can see how much wear and tear they've endured. Save you a lot of time with having to wash your hands for like 10 minutes trying to get that stuff off your hands, the paint and the mortar. And speaking of mortar, you definitely need some sort of mortar to strengthen, to act as a strengthening agent to the project. So what I've got here is foam coat, another product from the hot wire foam factory, and they supply you with directions. It's 3 parts powder to 1 part liquid. Another thing you're going to use or need are the measuring devices, the plastic bowl, and the spoon that I'm using. All things you can get at the dollar store. But what I have used in the past, as I'm using here with the rainforest waterfall, is non-sanded grout. You can use sanded grout. It's just, I think, a little bit more expensive, and it's more difficult to thin to be able to maintain the detail that you've created in your styrofoam. And then another complaint that a lot of people have had with grout is that the first layer is too thin, and it tends to flake off, or it tends to crack. And I think one of the benefits to the foam coat from the Hot Wire Foam Factory is it's specifically designed for polystyrene, for foam. And it does seem to have or at least a little bit more give than the grout, and I've not noticed the flaking off. And essentially what's going on is the first batch is too thin, and that's why you're getting that weak flaking and cracking to that layer. So if you're going to use grout, which I've done for many projects, you want to make sure that first layer is not incredibly watery. Like you can see it rolling down those rocks. It's more like a thin pancake batter. Another product you're going to want is at least a 2-inch brush. You don't want too big of a brush. You, again, get this at the dollar store, but just to be able to apply the mortar. Another optional product is Bounce from the Hot Wire Foam Factory. This is a product that you're going to add to the mortar, to the foam coat, to be able to act as a sort of impact resistant additive. If you're anything like me, you're a little clumsy and you wind up bumping into your project. Of course, we've got acrylic paints, various colors depending on what type of idea or project you're working on, but just cheap acrylic paint. Don't have to use acrylic, but it's just something I've always used. And like a mixing bowl, I've got like an old sherbet plastic bowl here, container. You can either mix paints or use it to store brushes and water. I've got a dollar store water bottle. I use this a lot. What I'll use it for, another sort of optional product, is I'll put water and then essentially keep adding acrylic paint, in this case gray in color. But you want to add too much water and then progressively keep adding more paint, because if it has too much paint, it's going to be too thick for it to be able to work its way through the water bottle. So that's why I usually start with too much water and then add paint. And of course, paint brushes. Again, you can get this at the dollar store. Just for being able to add, fine detail with the paint job that you're going to do. You can see the before and after footage of that exact same section of using the smaller brushes as opposed to like that 2-inch brush that I showed earlier, to be able to add your fine detail. And of course, you definitely want to use a sealant, and if you're building this for a living creature like a Chinese water dragon or gecko, you want to use a non-toxic sealant. I've got a list there of alternative sealants that you definitely want to call the company and research on your own. Make sure this is appropriate for a living creature. What I'm using there is Shields All, and it is non-toxic, to both animals and vegetation. So it's something, even if you're not creating this for a living creature, you want to seal it because it's going to make the project last longer. And usually what I'll end up doing is, as I said before, bumping into something or brushing up against it and damaging the project. And what I'll do is add a layer of sealant, as I just did with that paintbrush, and then sprinkle fine grain sand, which is also non-toxic, onto that surface to strengthen it up. It also acts as a way of adding traction and counteracts the shininess of the sealant a little bit. And I would definitely recommend for a basking spot to do this, where you add obviously the foam coat or grout, and then add a layer of sealant, a layer of this type of sand, and then just repeat the process to build that area up so it can withstand the heat. Optional item here is a level. If you're building, this is really for waterfalls only. If you're building a waterfall, this really comes in handy to be able to make sure that you've got perfectly level surfaces for the water to flow over. Another product, you saw the heavy-duty gloves earlier, but this is more of a fine touch, thinner plastic glove. And you definitely want these, again, for waterfalls, only to be able to apply the silicone. And another product, the silicone, the aquarium grade silicone. You want to apply this if you're, again, creating a waterfall to all the areas where you're going to have water on it 24/7. And here is one of those water pumps. This is the water pump I used in the tall waterfall. So it does not have a filtration system, so this is really only for a tabletop waterfall. If you're creating a waterfall or any type of water area for a living creature, you want a pump such as this where it's got a filtration system that would enable you to be able to clean the water, and it would just be more sanitary. Using it here in that bowl, that the tall waterfall that I used that for, showing that I could have used this for that. It just obviously wouldn't have been as tall, but you can still put it in the bowl and have that water cycling. Another product I used in a follow-up video to the rainforest waterfall is this fogger that got here with the rainforest waterfall. You can see that very realistic effect, sort of looks like a swamp. And then shown here with the turtle or frog waterfall. And it had different effects, shown here with the tall waterfall in changing colors, and just generally an interesting effect, more of a novelty. But there you have it, a materials list. I'm sure I left out something, but be sure to check back. I'm going to try to update the annotations, maybe add a couple. And as far as discovering different products, be sure to leave comments as to what you've come up with as far as alternative products, especially the non-toxic sealant. That seems to be one of the more popular questions or issues people have of not being able to find the products that they need. So thanks for watching.